You know someone like this. Or maybe you are someone like this. When things are fine, when life is moving along at its normal pace, they're present, warm even. They show up, they reply. They're the person you can count on in the ordinary moments. And then something hard happens. A loss, a failure, a season of pressure that doesn't let up, and they just go quiet. They stop replying as quickly. They cancel plans. They become harder to reach, harder to read, harder to find. Not dramatically, not with a fight or an explanation. They just withdraw, like a tide going out, and the people who love them are left standing on the shore wondering what they did wrong. Here's what most people never understand about this. The person who disappears when life gets hard isn't pulling away from you. They're pulling toward something. The only thing their nervous system knows how to do when the weight becomes too much. And understanding what that is changes everything about how you see this behavior. Let's start with what's actually happening neurologically when someone is under severe stress. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for social engagement, communication, planning, and connection, becomes significantly less accessible when the threat system is activated. The amygdala is running the show, and the amygdala, when overwhelmed, has one primary directive: reduce the number of demands on the system. Social connection, even with people you love, is a demand. It requires energy. It requires emotional availability. It requires the capacity to receive care without falling apart, to communicate what's happening without burdening the person you're talking to be present enough to be in relationship. When someone's nervous system is already at capacity, all of those requirements feel impossible, not difficult, impossible. So the nervous system does what any overwhelmed system does. It sheds load, and for many people, the load it sheds first is social engagement. This is not a character flaw. This is a nervous system doing what nervous systems do under pressure. But here's where it gets interesting, because the disappearance isn't random. It follows a specific psychological logic that is almost always rooted in something that happened long before this particular hard season. For most people who consistently disappear under pressure, the pattern was learned in childhood, in environments where struggling meant being a burden, where showing weakness led to disappointment or dismissal, where asking for help was either not modeled, not welcomed, or not safe. These people learned at a formative age that the way you handle difficulty is alone, that you figure it out, you push through, you don't bring your mess into other people's space. So when adult life gets hard and the old training activates, the nervous system doesn't reach toward connection. It reaches toward the strategy that felt safest when the template was being formed. And that strategy is disappearing, going somewhere internal, getting quiet, solving it, or surviving it alone. And here's what nobody talks about. The person who disappears is not indifferent to the people they're leaving behind. In many cases, they are acutely aware of the worry they're causing. They feel it. They intend to reach out. They tell themselves they'll respond when they feel more like themselves, when they have something useful to say, when they're not in the worst of it, when they can show up as the version of themselves that the other person knows and expects. And that moment keeps not arriving, so the silence extends, not from not caring, from caring too much to show up as less than they think they're supposed to be. Psychologists recognize this as a pattern connected to what is called the burden schema, a deeply held belief that one's needs and struggles are excessive and unwelcome to others. Research consistently shows that people with high burden schema scores are significantly less likely to seek social support during stress, not because they don't value connection, but because they have a fundamental, often unconscious belief that seeking it will cost them more than it helps them, that the people they reach out to will be depleted, disappointed, or driven away by their need. So they protect those people by disappearing. It doesn't look like protection from the outside, but from the inside, it feels like the most loving thing they can do. There's another layer, and this one is about control. When life gets hard, most things feel out of control. The situation, the outcome, the way other people are responding. But the one thing the disappearing person can still control is their own visibility. By going quiet, by pulling back, by managing how much of the hard thing leaks into their relationships, they maintain a sense of agency in a situation where agency feels impossible. The disappearance is, in a strange way, the only thing they can choose when everything else is being chosen for them. Psychologists call this a form of avoidant coping, not avoidance in the dismissive sense, but a coping strategy that involves reducing exposure to potential further stressors, including the stressor of being seen struggling. Research on avoidant coping shows that it is not inherently unhealthy. In the short term, it reduces cortisol, lowers acute stress response, and provides the nervous system with space to regulate. The problem is when it becomes the only available strategy, when the person has no other mechanism for managing difficulty, when the disappearance extends so long that the relationships they were protecting begin to deteriorate from the very absence meant to preserve them. Now let's talk about what this is like from the other side, because the people who love someone who disappears carry something heavy too. The silence reads as rejection. The withdrawal reads as distance. The not replying reads as not caring. And because the person who disappears is not communicating what's happening, the people left behind fill the silence with their own interpretations, usually the most painful ones. They did something wrong. They're not important enough. They're being pushed out. None of that is true, but silence doesn't correct the story, and this is one of the real costs of the disappearing, not just to the person doing it, but to the relationships that matter most to them. Let's be honest about something. If you are someone who disappears when life gets hard, and you are reading this with that quiet recognition, the pattern that protects you is also slowly doing something to the people who love you. Not because your need for space is wrong, it isn't. Space during difficulty is real, legitimate, and sometimes necessary. But total invisibility, the kind that stretches for weeks, that leaves people who care about you with no anchor and no information, that costs something. And the cost is usually paid by the relationship long after the hard season ends. The path forward isn't to perform connection you don't have capacity for. It's to find the smallest possible way to remain visible. Not a full explanation, not a detailed update, just a signal. I'm here, I'm in it, I'll be back. Even a sentence, even a single word, something that says, you're still in my world, even when my world has gotten very small. Because here's what's fascinating about the people who disappear. They don't disappear because connection doesn't matter to them. They disappear because it matters so much that they can't bear to offer a diminished version of it. They want to show up fully or not at all, and when full isn't available, they choose not at all, which they experience as protecting the relationship, even as it quietly strains it. That instinct to protect, to not burden, to wait until they can offer something worthy, is not the enemy. It comes from somewhere real. It came from somewhere that once made complete sense. But the people in your life right now are not the people who taught you that your need was too much. And giving them the chance to prove that one small, imperfect, incomplete signal at a time is not weakness. It's one of the braver things you can do. You don't have to show up whole, you just have to show up. And to anyone watching this who loves someone who disappears, it is almost certainly not about you. The withdrawal isn't a verdict on your relationship. It's a nervous system doing the only thing it learned to do when the weight becomes too much. The most powerful thing you can offer is not pressure, not pursuit, not hurt silence of your own. It's a door left open, a simple message that asks nothing and offers everything. I'm here when you're ready. No conditions, no expiry. That door, the one left quietly open, is sometimes the thing that makes it possible for someone to finally come back through. Subscribe to Brain Decoded for more psychology that puts words to things you've been carrying without them. And if someone you love has gone quiet, send this to them, not as a message, just as a door.